declaring that this guy had won the state fair for a prize bull, I think. And so the mayor invited him to the council meeting. They gave him a proclamation. And they put him in front of the whole crowd and asked him to speak. And he said, well, I want to thank everybody from the heart of my bottom. That's kind of the way. He kind of got a little tongue-tied there. That's kind of the way I feel tonight. I hope that doesn't happen to me. I cut these classified ads. You remember classified ads? Years ago, they had them in the newspaper. They don't have them anymore, do they? I guess they use Facebook. Is that what they use? But I cut these classified ads. Dinner special, turkey, $2.35. Chicken or beef, $2.25. Children, $2. Let's see. For sale, antique desk, suitable for a lady with thick legs and large drawers. I don't know. I'll end with this one. Lost. One small apricot poodle, neutered, like one of the family. Anyway, those have nothing to do with the lesson tonight. I have discovered over the years that if you begin your lesson with a little humor, that you'll have less tension throughout the night, and I'll have less tension. So we'll call that disassociated humor. As a student of history, I love history. I read every history book I can get my hands on. I just finished a new one by Bill O'Reilly, Killing the Terrorists. Have you read any of those Bill O'Reilly series? Great books, very, very interesting. I don't know that I agree with Bill O'Reilly's politics, but he writes some great books. I love history. I read every book I can get a hold of. As a student of history, I see many principles from historical events that can help us in our church. So I've got 3 historical events that I want to discuss and characterize and then draw an application on how that can apply to our church. Now, this is my opinion. You don't have to agree with my opinion on these applications, and you're welcome to disagree, but I have the floor. I get to. So these are the 3 basic principles of church management. Let's call it that. Number 1, I want to talk about the Civil War, the Battle of Lookout Mountain. Am I supposed to push this? Do I do this, or are you doing it?
You do it.
Which one do I hit?
The right arrow. There you go.
All right. Civil War, the Battle of Lookout Mountain. This was between the Army of the Potomac and the Army of North Virginia. Let me give a little background to this battle. The Army of the Potomac. This was the Army of the Cumberland. I'm sorry, between the Army of the Cumberland. There were 3 great armies in the North. The Army of the Potomac, the Army of the West, and the Army of the Cumberland. The Army of the Potomac had won many battles, had many colorful battles, battling Robert E. Lee. They'd won the Battle of Manassas, the Battle of Gettysburg, the Peninsular Campaign. The Great Army of the West, led by U.S. Grant, had won the Battle of Fort Henry, the Fort Donelson, Vicksburg, Shiloh. The Army of the Cumberland had won nothing. The Army in the middle, the Army in Tennessee, they'd won nothing. They had no national recognition. 2 weeks before the Battle of Lookout Mountain, they had a great defeat at the Battle of Chickamauga. And they're only salvaged by the rocket Chickamauga, I guess is how you pronounce that, George Thomas. And they retreated to Chattanooga. They were surrounded by the Confederate General Braxton Bragg. Now back then, the battle concept of these Civil War battles was you wanted to control the heights. You wanted the high elevation of the battlefield. And I suppose if you control the heights, you could congregate your weapons, your cannons at the heights and bombard the enemy, and you could win the battle. So the battle was to try to control the heights of the battlefield. Now the Lookout Mountain controlled the heights of Chattanooga. 2 weeks before the battle, U.S. Grant was given the command of the Army of the Cumberland. On November 25th, 1863, Grant gave the order to proceed up Missionary Ridge. And this was a huge, has anybody been there? Anybody seen that? You know what I'm talking about? It's a huge, almost straight up battlefield, and they were commanded to climb the battlefield and conquer the Confederates, which looks to me like would have been almost impossible. Grant expected the assault to take 2 to 3 weeks, and he had 25,000 troops in reserve. The orders of the troop was, once you hit opposition, dig in, and then the next day we'll attack again, and dig in, and the next day we'll attack again. Grant expected it to take 2 weeks. So the men started up the battlefield. The men were ashamed of themselves. They were ashamed of their army. They were ashamed of their lack of military distinction. And they were humiliated by their defeat at Chickamauga. So they started up. They hit the first line of defense, and they overcame it. What were their orders? The orders were to dig in. They wouldn't stop. They kept going. They hit the second battle defense. They overcame that. They kept going. They fought each other to be the first. They fought their way all the way to the top of the mountain. They captured Missionary Ridge and Lookout Mountain in less than 1 hour. They simply refused to turn back. This, by the way, gave Sherman the springboard for his march to Atlanta. So what's the application of this battle for Christians, for the church? The significance, the lesson is, never underestimate the power of God's people. The generals had underestimated the power of their army. Never underestimate the power of God's people. In fact, get out of the way of God's people. Let's go to Matthew chapter 17, verse 20. Matthew chapter 17, verse 20. And he said to them, because of the littleness of your faith, why could we not drive out the evil spirit? The apostles asked Jesus. And he said to them, because of the littleness of your faith. For truly I say to you, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move, and nothing will be impossible to you. Now he was talking to the apostles, but he's also talking to us. But this kind of did not go out except for prayer and fasting. Let's go to Matthew chapter 13, verses 31 and 32. He presented another parable to them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, which a man took and sowed in his field. And this is smaller than all the other seeds. But when it is full grown, it is larger than the garden plants and becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air come and nest in its branches. So never underestimate the power of God's people. The church says, the leadership of the church says we can't afford a larger sanctuary. God's people say we will increase their contribution. The church leadership says we can't afford a new missionary effort. The church people say we will find someone to go. The leadership says no one will work on a new church ministry program. Some church members rise up and do the work. Get out of the way of God's people. Never underestimate their power and authority. Look, I go the wrong way. Am I going the wrong way? There's the Battle of Missionary Ridge right there. All right, second application. At the end of World War I, France was tired of being invaded by Germany, from Germany. Germany had invaded France in World War I. They'd invaded France in the Franco-Prussian War of 1870 to 1871. They'd invaded France in the Napoleonic Wars. France was tired of it, and they decided they're going to put an end to the threat from Germany. They decided they would build a huge military fortification all along the border between France and Germany. They hired an engineer named Jean Maginot to design and build this wall. They used 35% of the French budget from 1923 to 1936 to build this huge 3-story wall between France and Germany. There were walls, forts, pillboxes, barbed wire entanglements, communication systems, hospitals, storerooms, garages, barracks. It was quite an accomplishment. At the beginning of the war, of World War II, all military strategists said that the strongest army on earth was the army of France. They were given all recognition as the most powerful army in the world, the most powerful army in all of Europe. What did Hitler do at the beginning of World War II? He went around the Maginot Line. He invaded through Belgium and the Netherlands, and the Maginot Line surrendered in 2 weeks after he invaded. All of France surrendered in 6 weeks after Hitler invaded. He attacked with remember what they called his attack? They called it in German the Blitzkrieg. He had German airplanes, the Stuka dive bombers. He had paratroopers. He had mechanized tanks, the Panzer tanks. He conquered the most powerful military power in Europe and in the world, according to the military strategists, in 6 weeks. France surrendered to Germany after he invaded. What was the problem with the Maginot Line? Pointed the wrong direction. The Maginot Line was built for the wrong war.
It was stationary.
What war was the Maginot Line built for? World War I. World War II just went around it. All Hitler had to do is go around it. So what's the lesson for this application? Constantly look to the future, challenge the status quo. I have this quote that I cut out of the Christian Chronicle last year. Churches that survive and succeed in the turbulent times ahead must move from accepting the status quo to a commitment to continuous improvement. The failure to make this move will be suicidal. I don't remember. I didn't write down who wrote that one. Look to the future, not to the past. Challenge the status quo. Constantly look to the future. Let's go to Ephesians 6:10. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might. Put on the full armor of God so that you will be able to stand firm against the schemes of the devil. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the powers, against the world forces of this darkness, against the spiritual forces of wickedness in the heavenly places. Therefore, take up the full armor of God so you will be able to resist in the evil day, and having done everything, to stand firm. So what's the application here? I looked it up. I looked up on Google. In 1950, the Church of Christ was identified as the fastest growing church in the United States. I guess long before most of us. Anybody around 1950? Were you around, Fred, 1950? But we're no longer the fastest growing church in the United States.
You know why it was fastest growing?
Why?
Because home Bible study.
Because of I remember those film strips. You remember that? Those Jewel, what was it called? Jill Miller's film strips. I remember that. But we're not anymore. Who's the fastest growing church in the United States now? It was in 1990 census, the 2000 census, and the 2010 census. Anybody know? Mormons. The Mormon church. Now, who is the fastest growing church in the 2020 census? Assembly of God. Assembly of God, according to according to Google, that I looked up. So that tells me, by the way, the Mormon Church places emphasis upon the family and family life and family growth. And the Assembly of God places emphasis on emotion, on the spirit, on emotional church service. Maybe young people are looking for more for family, and more emotional. According to the Christian Chronicle, in 25 years, the Church of Christ as we know, because we're losing membership so fast, the Church of Christ as we know it will no longer be available. 25 years. According to the Christian Chronicle, an article I read in it, and it may not be the Bible, and it may not be accurate, but that's scary to me. I've been a member of this church for 20 years. I pulled out a director from 20 years ago. I counted twice as many members 20 years ago than we have today. We've lost half our membership. Really, we've lost half our membership in the last 5 years. What's going on? I don't know. Why? Some people blame COVID. Some people blame we lost our long-time minister. Some people blame we allowed women to take some sort of leadership role in the church. I don't know. I think we can blame anything, can't we? We can continue to blame. But if we keep going the way we are, we're not going to be a church in 25 years, according to the numbers. Now, what my conclusion is, and you don't have to agree with me, is sometimes we can't differentiate Bible strategy and techniques from church doctrine. I think there's a difference. When I was a member of Southern Hills Church of Christ in Abilene, one advantage I've had is moving everywhere, all around the United States. I've been a member of a dozen different churches, and I've seen a dozen different ways of doing things. In Southern Hills, when they introduced the overhead projector, y'all remember those days? 25 families left mad. That wasn't in the scriptures. That's not authorized in scripture. Well, what does that have to do with scripture? 25 families left mad. I don't know. It seems to me like maybe we emphasize technique and think that technique is doctrine. Doctrine never changes, but technique changes. We don't use Joel Miller film strips anymore, do we? What would we use now? PowerPoint, I guess, right? What would we use now? I remember the Joel Miller film strips had the 5 steps to salvation. Do what? You remember that? I grew up in Abilene, Texas. When I was a kid, there were 36 churches of Christ in Abilene. In 1950, the largest church in Abilene was the Northside Church of Christ. They closed their doors in 1995 in Abilene, Texas. Graham Street closed their doors in Abilene, Texas in 1985. 14th and Vine closed their doors in 1986. My church, Woodlawn Church of Christ, where I grew up with 500 members, that closed their doors 5 years ago. So what happened? I don't know. I don't know. But I don't think that we're looking to the future. Looks to me like we tend to look to the past. And it seems to me like if we want to be a viable, dynamic, aggressive church, are our kids going here? Well, yours do, don't they? My kids go to the non-denominational church. So, and that bothers me. I didn't do my job. But I say, why don't you go to a church with me? They say, Daddy, your church is boring. I said, well, you go to church to get entertained? And they say, no, we go to get spiritual food. We're not getting food at your church. So I shut up. Then I've been defeated. I shut up. I don't agree with them. But at least they're going somewhere, I guess. But anyway, what's the answer? I don't know. I don't know the answer. But I think that the challenge is to look to the future, not look to the past, to be successful as a church. I think that's our challenge.
We come to be more evangelistic.
More evangelistic?
Yeah.
I think
Take the principles of the Joel Miller film strip and put it in whatever people look at now. They'll go on television.
A laptop. Yeah, maybe so. I don't know.
I guarantee you.
According to our analysis of the fastest growing churches, young people are looking for a church that emphasizes family and family relations and family growth, and they want a more emotional church service. Because those Assembly of Gods, they have some really emotional church services. I'm not saying that's what we should do. I'm just concluding maybe that's what they're looking for. I don't know. I don't know the answer. I'm pointing out the problem. That's probably a problem. All right, last one. Last application. There's some more of the Maginot Line. George Washington Why is George Washington the father of our country?
He went to the British.
He whipped the British in the Revolutionary War. Is George Washington a great military leader? No, he's not considered one. He's not considered a good one at all. He lost every major American city. He lost almost every major battle, but which one did he win? The last one. The most important one, the last one. By the way, one principle that I always applied to my class that I thought was interesting. When Mao Zedong won a revolution in China, what did he do? He became emperor. When Napoleon won a revolution in France, what did he do? He became emperor. When Caesar won a revolution in Italy, in Rome, what did he do? He became emperor. When who won in Cuba? When Castro won a revolution in Cuba, what did he do? He became supreme leader. When George Washington won a revolution, what did he do? He resigned and went home to Martha. We honor George Washington for what he didn't do. Not for what he did, but what he didn't do. We would have gladly, we worship George Washington, we would have gladly made him King George I. Gladly. And he said, nope, I don't want any of that. I'm going home to Martha. And that's why we honor George Washington. That's why he's considered one of our greatest leaders and our greatest president. He lost the Battle of New York. He lost the Battle of Brandywine. He lost the Battle of Germantown. He lost the Battle of Monmouth Courthouse. He lost the Battle of Fort Washington. He won Trenton, and he won Yorktown. He won the last one. Washington led by the strength of his character, his personality, his impeccable reputation. What's our application? You don't have to win every battle to win the war. You don't have to win every battle to win the war. He won the most important one, the last one. Winston Churchill, on October the 29th, 1941, was the scheduled speaker for the Harrow Preparatory School. That's what they call a high school in England. Harrow, Harrow, Preparatory School. Every seat was full. He's considered the greatest speaker of the 20th century, the greatest public speaker of the English language. Every seat was full. They came to hear Winston Churchill. So he got up in front of the crowd. This was a graduation speech. He pulled his cigar out of his mouth, and in his old gravelly voice he said, never, 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 never give up. And then he sat down. He spoke for 15 seconds, and he sat down. The crowd was shocked, and then they were amazed, and then they realized what he'd done. What had he done? He just gave the autobiography of his life. He just gave his autobiography. At the beginning of World War II, every country in Europe had fallen under Hitler's heel, and the leadership of Great Britain, including the king, said, we got to make a deal with Hitler. We got to make a deal with Hitler. We got to negotiate with this boy. He's going to kill us. He's going to crush us. He's going to destroy us. And one man stood up in Parliament. One man stood up and said, no, we will never surrender. We will fight him. You remember that speech? We will fight on the streets. We will fight on the beaches. We will never surrender. And I don't remember the rest of it. It said, until someday the New World and all its might and power will rise up in defense of the whole. He was talking about us, wasn't he? He was praying that America would come and save their nation. And we did, didn't we? But he never gave up. And he stood up to Hitler, and he won. And thank God for Winston Churchill. Thank God for Winston Churchill. What would happen had England gone under? Who'd be next? You think Hitler would have stopped with that? No, he'd come after us at some point, wouldn't he? Thank God for Winston Churchill. By the way, I read he wrote a 5-part series of World War II. I read it. It's very interesting. A little bit biased towards his point of view. But in there, I thought it was very interesting. He pointed out, he says, Hitler should have won World War II. All of the cards were in Hitler's deck. Hitler should have won. He said, he pointed out several reasons that Hitler didn't win. Dunkirk, Stalingrad, a couple of the battles. But he says, we won because of the providence of God. That's why. And he was there. Churchill was there. He saw it. He says, we won because of the providence of God. In other words, God's hand came down and helped us win. And Churchill was there. He saw it. That was him pointing it out. So what's the application? You don't have to win every battle to win the war. Never give up. Revelation 2:10. Revelation 2:10. I know your tribulation and your poverty, but you are rich. And the blasphemy by those who say they are Jews and are not, but are a synagogue of Satan. Do not fear what you are about to suffer. Behold, the devil is about to cast some of you into prison, so that you will be tested, and you will have tribulation for 10 days. Be faithful unto death, and I will give you the crown of life. This is not our home. We're pilgrims passing through. We are strangers in a strange land. We're not made for this place. That's why we get sick and we die. Earth is dangerous for Christians. This is not our home. Jesus is going to come take us home someday, and that's going to be our home. Jesus is on our side. I stand before you as a sinner. I have a temper. I know it's hard to believe. I cuss occasionally. I'm not the example I should be. But Jesus is on my side. I will never, never give up. I intend to claim that crown of righteousness. How about you? Thank you for your time and attention. You don't have to agree with my analysis today, but I do think the church is in trouble. We need to figure out how to fix it. Thank you.